Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure many of you, most of you, must know Mark Read. Mark, I just want to say a personal thank you and also a thank you on behalf of SAFIM. Just to say that you always open up your heart and your home, your gallery home, to SAFIM, for which we are immensely, immensely grateful. And most especially today for having Norman Catherine with us. Della will introduce Norman in a minute, but I can tell you that when Norman exploded, like an explosion, on the scene when we were very young, it was the time where people were living in communes. We wanted things that were different and avant-garde. There was an ethic of changing the world. And when we saw those paintings, we knew someone was absolutely ahead of their time. And there was a lot of conversation about what he meant and about what we saw, and probably the two weren't meeting at all, but it was amazing. And we have witnessed and watched an incredible career absolutely since then. Mark, just wanted to say thank you so much to you for doing this for us. Everybody here really appreciates it. You can see by the wonderful turnout. So thank you.
Doug, thank you, and thanks for your friendship over so many decades and the laughs we've had. Ladies and gentlemen, a building never exists successfully without people. And evenings like tonight add to the patina of CIRCA. And it's a building I've been hugely proud of. And so it's really lovely to have you all. I see so many people who I know well, and I know how busy you all are. And so to take time and come here and to come and listen to an icon of South African art, true, hate me saying it, but a true South African master now. And I'm going to restrict myself to really a couple of sentences about the show. And that is that now and then, every dealer who takes his or her life at all seriously in the art world is blessed with a show that reminds them why it's an extraordinary thing to be an art dealer. And this show is that for me. I find myself somehow here a couple of times a day. My office is across the road in Everard Read. And a couple of times a day, I sort of wake up almost like I've been sleepwalking. I'm here again, looking around Norman's show. And each time I visit this show, I discover new things, new witticisms, new dark patches, new senses of foreboding, and new effervescent objects and messages of pain. And it's so easy when you see a density of work of this quality to see why Norman Catherine is such a star in contemporary South African art. That's all I have to say. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Wow. Am I on? Yes. So, what a start for this evening. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Dory. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to you all for this wonderful SAFIM event tonight. And I indeed have the privilege of introducing Norman Catherine to you all, whom, as you've heard from Dory and from Mark, one of our leading contemporary artists in South Africa today. So what I want to say is, Mark, we are standing in a space in Rosebank, Johannesburg, in your CIRCA marvelous gallery. But Norman Catherine's works are shown as major collections, both locally and internationally. Locally, in the South African National Gallery in Cape Town, in the Constitution Court in Johannesburg, as well as the Reserve Bank of South Africa. But internationally, when I was reading up about you, and it went on, and your influence you've had, and as Dory said, how you changed everything for everyone in the 70s. But to think that you're in the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, in MoMA, in the Brooklyn Museum in New York, it's just very exciting for you to be here with us.
Thanks, Dory, and Mark, and everybody who came. I'm not one for speaking about my work because I'm struggling so much with it all the time that I never feel it's actually has credibility enough to talk about. But anyway, I'll try my best to give you an idea of how I came to be doing what I do. Why we mentioned prints is because prints were the first thing that I actually did that got me onto the art scene, in actual fact. I was doing an art matric in East London where I grew up in the 67, 68. And there I noticed the work of Cecil Scottners. And I really loved these woodcut prints. And that sort of was the first South African artist I'd really noticed, and that said something to me. So I started doing my own lino cut and woodcut prints. And the following year, somebody from art school brought work up to show Cecil. And Cecil was impressed and actually arranged my first exhibition in Johannesburg in 1969. It was a downtown, opposite law courts. It's a Herbert Evans art gallery upstairs that Cecil Scottners had got together with Herbert Evans for new upcoming artists. So that's basically how I exhibited my first work just a year after school. I wasn't academic at all, so I went to art school because I failed high school. I wasn't very good at anything basically other than drawing pictures or drawing biology diagrams, but the rest of academic work I was not very good at. So it was a lucky fail because I persuaded my folks to let me go do an art matric at the technical high school. There you could wear long hair, you didn't matter what shoes you wore, it was much freer. So the first time in my life at school, which previous school was I was brought up very disciplined, and I really didn't see much of anything outside of East London. So that really, doing the show and coming up here was kind of an introduction. Cecil had said that I should come up here and try and get a job somewhere. So I didn't have I couldn't enroll in university as I didn't have a proper matric. And I wasn't that worried about that anyway. So he suggested I find a job somewhere. So basically I didn't find a job, but I was up here for a while and in Pretoria and met Walter Battis, for instance, who was also one of my favorite artists of the time and influenced me quite a bit, especially sense of humor. I mean, I think if I've got one thing going for me, it's my humor, although it's mixed with the dark side. So I've got a kind of dark humor. And I think that's what's kept me going, is that. Not so much the subject matter of my work as the maybe vitality or the humor or that mix of the dark and the light. Anyway, I couldn't get work up here so I went back to East London and got a job as a signwriter apprentice. And that's where I learned how to silk screen. Rudimentary silk screening, but silk screening for sale signs and stuff. And anyway, so I did sort of gain something out of that, and then I came up to Joburg after that and worked for a bit in a design studio. And then I met Bruce Atwood, who is the father of Mark Atwood, one of our best contemporary art printing studios. And Bruce was working in commercial printing, which I was involved in because I worked in the design studio. And from there, also met Walter Battis in those times, and he discussed his Fook Island concept with me. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was his whole fantasy concept. And so we were printing banknotes and stamps like that, stamps and doing coins, and I was inventing animals, and it was quite a fantasy project. But Bruce Atwood was printing then, and his son Mark, who's now, as I talked about, one of the best printers, was still a little kid running around the print shop. I exhibited then with Linda Goodman, but it was my first works that actually got me shows, because I was doing my own silk screening in my bedroom, just little, on simple little frames, and Janet, my wife, was helping me, so we worked in this little tiny room nearby in Alice Lane. It used to be all farms and horses and stuff. It was a little cottage there. From then on, I worked with various printmakers, so that was one thing that has been consistent through my time. Although I'd been doing sculpture right from the beginning, I never really knew what I wanted to do with a sculpture or printmaking or painting. So then it was just found objects, a bit of wood sculpture, but I continued doing that alongside, and then in the early 70s I learned airbrushing, which was a technique I used a lot during the 70s until the 80s, and I learned that in a design studio, which was a technique that wasn't being used here, or in fine art really, but it was used commercially for certain things. Anyway, I exhibited then with Linda Goodman had seen my works. I was exhibiting there at that time, and continued working with Walter Battis, and doing my own printmaking. I was then I was doing a lot of assemblage work with found objects and mixed media works. That was in the 80s. The work in the 80s, it's quite different to some of the work here. It was much more aggressive, much more kind of social commentary of the times in South Africa, and dark. So I still had my humor, but it was more dark, a dark sense of humor compared to, say, works on this show, which for me are light-hearted compared to those type of works. So, being to this show, Mark hadn't had a show for a few years, so he approached me late last year and said, why don't we just do a show with work you've actually got and haven't been exhibited. So that's what we've put together. Mark, thank you for doing that. It's been an interesting journey, and art for me is a sort of in a form of visual entertainment. I don't go too deeply into worrying about what I'm trying to do, but when I'm busy doing the work, it evolves into something I didn't expect. So my work's more from a subconscious kind of level, but connected to different events that happen in the world or here. Crime and things like that. Corruption has always been a big theme in my work. Gangsterism, which is rife in South Africa now, or has been for many years, continues in my work. So I'm quite I watch, things that influence me are people and politics. Things I see on television, whether it's here, whether it's Donald Trump making a scene in America. Not a big fan of mine, but anyway, I see myself as a satirist, so in a way, there's a lot of subject matter for me. My work also, on the other side, I've always been the interest in surrealism, and worked from Hieronymus Bosch in the old times to René Magritte. So there's always been, in certain of my work, a surrealistic element, which I bring in current things into. But ultimately, I'm trying to have fun. It might not look all fun, but for me, it's fun.
Norman, I'd like to ask you about your sculpture there. Could you tell us your material, your theme? I'm fascinated by it.
I've always loved totems, from American Indian totem to African totems, and I mean, African art's always inspired me. The style, African style, as well as Picasso, who was influenced by African masks and things. So I've always had, from the beginning, a kind of African influence in my work, in its look to a certain extent. That's a very fun look, and it's just, for me, a humorous contemporary totem. That's an addition, for your interest. It's, there are 5 of them, or there were 5. So it's a limited edition where it's quite technical work. I have to make a pattern for the whole thing, cut out the little pieces. They're all laminated together and painted. So it's an edition itself, like a bronze could be, but it's handmade edition. There's no mold or anything like that. Do tapestry with Margaret Stevens many years ago, and then I met somebody who was doing tufted wool carpeting, which I thought was a very nice technique for my work, as it's very dense and the color was really rich and solid. And basically, I mean, this is a self-portrait of me painting myself, but that's when I had hair, obviously. I do a drawing, a paint by number drawing for a work like this. So there's an outline, I fill in the numbers for the color wools that I choose, and somebody makes them down in Port Alfred for me. You know, crafts have always been something I've enjoyed, crafts, even roadside art, and carpets and things have only recently, techniques of tapestry have come back in quite a big way. Whereas in those times, nobody's really doing it. Tapestries Margaret Stevens has been doing for many years, and she's the main person, but this is done by somebody else, and I've been doing them since 1988. The beauty of doing these also is that I can do very large-scale works, whereas paintings I never really do. And it's nice for hitting your head against if you're feeling frustrated. Another thing about my work that's a big, important aspect is color. I love color. I mean, I can work in black and white happily, but color's been the one thing that's been given my work a kind of a difference. So I think I've really spent a lot of time thinking and working with color, and color, the feeling of color, the mood color gives. Yeah, I've been working with Angus for about 10 years. He's very equipped to do any scale sculpture, and he's got a good team of people who work for him who can assist me with large-scale works. I can't do them at home because molds have to be made, and even the clay version weighs a ton. So basically, in doing a work like this, an armature is made in steel first of the basic shape, and then it's covered in clay, which the assistants will help scale up from a smaller version. I usually have done a smaller version of a large work to get used to the work and think about it more, and then maybe do a large scale. So it's prepared to a certain stage for me. Then I come and work on all the final thicknesses and details and all the fine scarification on the work. So fairly simple shapes, but a lot of the detail is in the fine, which you'll only see really close up. I suppose the work, I never really know what I'm doing and what I'm supposed to be trying to say, but it's more of a feeling of, it's an introspective kind of work again, thinking and looking into yourself, and maybe just the shape of it's fluid, it's not jagged and rough. Like my work of the 80s and that was much more sort of harsh in a way. It is softened in a way, the new work I've been doing, and not as aggressive in one way. So for me, the new works are very, much more sort of silent than a lot of my earlier works. It's a calm work, but on the surface, if you look at the surface of the works, you see all the kind of cuts and scars and little fine details that really carry the message of where one's been over time. It's the history of everything. I mean, the reason I've got a lot of my work might show stitching up and scars and patching is because when I was a youngster, I had many unfortunate accidents, or unusual accidents where I was in hospital a lot, or having stomach pump for eating mothballs, or so I was prone to accidents, and so a lot of, I suppose, my kind of ideas come from more life experiences than having learned or being taught what kind of art I should be doing. I've done it more from instinct and from life experiences, from the people I've met over time. Maybe I analyze it very simply afterwards when I'm doing work, but I don't try and overanalyze something while I'm doing it too much, because it takes away the mystery of something that you might discover. It's like being an inventor of something, being an artist. You're inventing something as well. Totally a visual thing. It's a new invention, something that's never been seen like that. And that's the fun in it for me. And adding things from our past so that don't have to stand out and say anything about what I'm trying to say. It's just got the feeling of it.
And what's the reason why they're always upside down? What is that?
Well, they haven't always been upside down. The previous large ones were looking up.
So what made you do this?
I think I was tired of looking up. And no, I think the weight of everything in the world, maybe, you felt like just relaxing, just putting your head down and absorbing.
Who's the gent in the tin hat I see in front of your works?
This?
Yes, yeah.
Maybe he's one of Bossa's mates. No, I think the hat's more about authority. I use the hat and the businessman, and well, in there it's the business and splitting apart.
Yeah.
They are called exercise, I think. That's called exorcise. So he's exercising his...
Not after anybody, just like a dude.
No, it's not anybody particular. It's a feeling. It might be me. A lot of work, a lot of things I do are just things that I might be feeling about myself. They don't have, they're not anybody specific. Or it's kind of opening yourself up to things, or seeing yourself in other ways. Looking at yourself, the different sides of yourself. The print up there at the back with the eye to eye is really about self-examination or self-conflict with yourself or your alter ego.
And I see baboons also in quite a lot of your work.
Yes, that's...
That's scary.
But the ape has been in my work from ages ago. I've used the baboon. I'm not quite sure. I think it was maybe just a fascination when as a kid I used to go to the local zoo in East London and feed the monkeys and baboons. I know there's one sculpture here called Muse with the baboon's body on top of my head. A lot of my work's to do with, fantasy, but dreams, where you...
Yeah,
Nightmares.
waking up to
I used to sleepwalk when I was a kid for many years, and my parents, I used to wake up in the kitchen, and there used to be always something trying to get into the house. So a lot of my ideas come from scary moments as a kid. I suppose my first art exploits were telling scary stories to friends and scaring the shit out of them. But I was very good at that, making up things.
I was thinking to myself, do you ever get scared by your imagination?
Actually not. I don't get scared by imaginations. I think it maybe takes the edge of being scared about reality. So I think I'd say my monsters from my dreams or reality, by doing it in my art is therapeutic, I think, in more of a way than it doesn't make me scared. Because I think I've got actually a sense of humor. It's comical, so I never really show real blood and guts and all that. It's stylized, the work. It's almost, so it's not real bloody, gory, dark work. For me, it's still comical. It's comical. But I like to still create quite a strong message, if I can, the way I do it.
So Norman, what is your favorite
Favorite what?
part of the collection here? Your favorite piece, what is yours?
I must say, of the sculptures, I do like the versions of head to toe of my sculptures. It's just the way I want to feel at the moment. I'm not saying it's the best work. Others I like for different reasons, but they're not really how I want to feel at the moment.
What did you feel when you stepped back and you saw all of this, sort of a testimony to what you'd been doing over a number of years?
Well, I was actually, with this show, I was quite happy that, I chose the works because the works are our own, but I was quite happy with this show that Mark could put it all together, help arrange the show, and seeing it like this was actually quite a relief. It's the first time I've been less worried about the show itself. Normally I'm so involved and I get too worried about what works next year or academic about it, whereas this is kind of fresh. It shows works that haven't been seen together for some years.
Thanks everyone. Thank you, Norman.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your efforts in inspiring people.